Paperback Rocker, episode 89. Hey, this is Matt Severson, the Paperback Rocker, and I'm broadcasting from my 6x9-foot cinder block shack in the desert of northern Mexico, southern Texas. Welcome and thanks for checking out my show.
Broadcasting from the dark side of the moon, it's the Paperback Rocker.
Hey everybody, what's up? It's your old friend Matt back again with yet another installment of my novel, The Blue Whiskey Book. And once again, you are here with me on my podcast, The Paperback Rocker Show. Thanks for being here as always. Drop me a line sometime. Let me know how you're liking the story so far. That would be at paperbackrocker@live.com. You can find my books on Amazon. Contact me if you need help, and I will direct you to them. Or you can buy one directly from me. Once again, paperbackrocker@live.com. When last we read, we stopped on the bottom of page 185, and our hero Stanton Wheelhouse III is on another voyage in his Wanderlust vehicle, the panel van, and he is, well, that's about all I need to say, I guess. He's traveling and refreshing his mind to write some songs and things like that, and I will join the story in progress on the bottom of page 185. As I neared, New Orleans, a grin sprouted on my face, and I couldn't remove it for the life of me. I was like a man coming home from work after a long commute. New Orleans was my home. New York was where I worked. I drove to the Thirsty Possum, but was not conscious of it. For all I know, Wanderlust remembered the way to her spot behind the building and took us there on her own. We parked on the packed dirt, and I walked around to the front. Once again, a cardboard sign was balanced against the window. I opened the door and took it in hand. I saw Reuben washing glasses with his back to me. He had no idea I was coming back to see him. "Have you found the boy you want, or is the position still open, Master Reuben?" After a long pause, he said, "Now I have." I got to remember his accent from so long ago. He turned and appraised me up and down and smiled like a father seeing his son return from war. His lips trembled and he could not speak. Tears appeared and did what tears do. I walked forward and sat next to the son of Faulkner's stool and reached my arms out to my old friend, and we embraced across the bar top, laughing and crying and making strange sounds we would be embarrassed of if other men had heard them. When we released each other, Reuben walked from behind the bar to the front window and turned the open sign to closed. "This floor is filthy," I said as I walked to the mop closet. "Come on, Stan, don't be ridiculous. Just once, for old time's sake. Pour us a beer and put on your perfect playlist. I haven't heard it in forever." I filled the bucket, which in turn filled my empty bucket, and set into the mopping. It had been a long time since I danced a mop across this floor, but I remembered the steps. It felt wonderful to be doing this thing completely unrelated to playing music, because music is scrutinized and critiqued, and mopping rarely is. I heard buttons being pushed rapidly on the old Wurlitzer, and then the familiar count-in of Rock Around the Clock. Reuben swiveled his head to catch my glance, and we smiled knowingly at each other. "This is heaven," I said. "Can I have my old job back?" "Hell no," Reuben shouted over the sound of the juke, but his smile never left. When I finished mopping, I walked to the bar and sat down on the stool next to Faulkner's. Reuben leaned on the bar from the opposite side. "How long you staying?" he asked. "Forever." "What's the matter? Growing pains?" "I'm not making out too well in Greenwich Village," I said. Good old Greenwich, said Reuben with a chuckle. That's not what I hear. I've still got friends up there. They say you're doing swell. They say you even went to London to open for Dylan. Sounds like more of a big deal when you say it, Rube. How many times did I tell you not to expect overnight success up there, Stanton? A lot, but it came so easy here. New Orleans is not and never will be New York City. Thank God for that, I said. Of course, no place should be exactly like another place, and no man should be exactly like another man. Ever the philosopher. I agree. Speaking of that, from what I've heard, you've done a good job of distancing yourself from Dylan musically. He kind of told me to. Pshaw. I heard you play right here in the Thirsty Possum dozens of times. You're nothing like him. He can't hold a candle to you, instrumentally or vocally. Don't stroke my ego, I said. Well, maybe just a little bit more. Okay, well, here's a stick in the ribs for you, Stanton. You're better than Bob Dylan in nearly every way, but you'll never be as famous as him. That's not saying you won't be famous in your own right. I'm just telling you how it is. Let me know if you ever want to know why. We sat there for a few minutes without speaking. I watched the beads of condensation run down the sides of my beer mug. I wasn't used to the swampy climate anymore. I felt a little dizzy, and the beer added to that. I hadn't drank since the flight from London. Was Chaim's funeral nice? Reuben asked. How in the hell do you know about that? I said. Benjamin and I were close friends growing up. We had our bar mitzvah together. What the hell, I said. Have you been spying on me? And you're Jewish? Yes and no. The other way around, I mean. I'm a non-practicing Jew, and I wasn't spying on you. I haven't talked to Benjamin in years. How do you know about Benjamin and me, then? I said. Friend of a friend. How's he doing as your manager? He's generous and fair and works hard, but he's got no connections at the record labels. I'll bet that's why you haven't been as successful as you could have been. I know it's not because of a lack of talent. Not bragging, but I've only gotten better since I left, I said. I practically shower with my guitar. I thought of the old apartment over the hardware store. It was a bittersweet memory. Then I thought of my smashed Gibson, the one Reuben had so generously given to me. Let's change the subject, I said. How's the Thirsty Possum doing? You're looking at it, Stanton, but you're closed. It doesn't get much better when I'm open. Ever since the son of Faulkner was killed and you left, it's like this place is cursed. Don't blame me and Faulkner. What's really happening? Bourbon Street is changing. It's becoming commercialized. The tourists outnumber the cockroaches, but they don't want to drink beer in a stale saloon like the Possum. They want to drink hurricanes and watch dueling pianists. I was stunned trying to imagine that, but one of the best ideas I ever had struck me right then, and to use a cliche, it was like a bolt out of the blue. How much do you owe on this place? I asked. Not a cent, but this dump ain't worth much, Stanton. Places like this in the village go for $80,000, I said. Back then, that was a lot of money. That's the village. You said yourself that New Orleans is being commercialized. Reuben stared blankly in the direction of the wall behind me, but didn't speak. His wheels were turning. Plus, this place has an apartment above it, I said. It's perfect. We just have to find the right buyer. Reuben shook his head and woke from his trance. What are you getting at, Stanton? Let's clean up the Possum and sell it. Come back to New York and make a go of it with Ben and me. Then what? I could tell Reuben was wondering if I was angling for the money he would make from the sale. Do I have to spell it out? Your old best friend Ben owns a hardware store in the land of coffee shops and nightclubs. You're my best friend, said Reuben. I said, I'm Ben's best friend too. He said, God, this is a small world. You don't have to tell God that, I said. He decorated the place. Let's call Ben and run the idea by him. Not so fast. Let me think about it. Go for a walk while I mull it over. Got it. I polished off my last swig of beer and walked to the back door. Exiting it reintroduced me to the smells of being by dirty water. The fish, the bait, the diesel, the decaying vegetation, the boat exhaust. All sound horrible, but the mixture was a perfume my olfactory had missed. I threw my head back, and the sun on my closed eyelids warmed my soul. My stride alternated between anxiously fast and observantly slow, until I found myself once again on that bench where I had spent so many hours practicing. My new guitar was locked safely in Wanderlust. I still had no urge to play. The sound of the water in the boats, combined with the aforementioned odors, enveloped me like nothing since my mother's womb. I laid down on my back on the bench, and the sun felt so... Wake up, Stanton. It was Reuben. I'm sorry I'm late for work, Master Reuben. I fell asleep. You're not late for anything. My God, you're still a piece of work. Sit up. I did so, and Reuben sat down next to me. We gazed out onto the water for a long time in silence. Reuben put his arm around my shoulder. I didn't object. We loved each other, after all, like brothers, mind you. Let's go have a drink, he said after a while. The possum? Nah, let's take a stroll down Old Bourbon. I want to know what you think about it. Maybe it hasn't changed. Maybe it's my imagination. We walked a few blocks back, and blues music drifted to my ear. The old bluesmen are still playing, I said. That hasn't changed. Yeah, but they're playing in the tourist bars. We can't afford to book them anymore. I knew we meant the other dive bar owners like Reuben, and them meant the old black bluesmen who understandably followed the money. Folk music still hasn't caught on here? I asked. There's probably 24 people in this city who know the name of Bob Dylan. My head dropped at that. Don't take it the wrong way. Hundreds of people know who you are. So did you think about selling the possum, I asked? I had an idea rolling around in my skull, and his last sentence supported it. I love the possum, he said, but it's making me miserable. A love-hate thing? Mm-hmm. What would you say if I told you it was possible for you to buy half ownership of a club in Greenwich Village if you sold the possum? Where do I sign? He said. Let's go back to the possum, I said. I don't care about these other places. I'm from bloody Greenwich Village, after all. Reuben smiled at me. He knew I was joking. He also knew I was telling the truth. Back at the saloon, we talked about the village, and every time I tried to change the subject to the thirsty possum, Reuben begged me to tell him more about his old stomping grounds. I told him about my first show at the coffee shop and how the Jewish community had supported me. I showed the tattoo. Reuben said he loved it, but that I was insane, so that was a love-hate thing too, I guess. We had run through nearly every record on the juke and were very drunk by the time I muscled the discussion from the village to the French Quarter. Reuben, would you seriously consider selling the possum and moving back to the village? I would, but I'd have nothing. You'd have a lot of money. Maybe, but not enough to buy a bar there. I told you your old friend Ben owns a hardware store in the village. What's that got to do with anything? Do I have to connect every dot for you, I said. I thought I'd been heavy-handed with my suggestions already. We'll turn the hardware store into a saloon like the possum. Bring the French Quarter to New York? That's a good way to put it. That could work, Stanton. It would work, and you'd have me in residency. I don't know what that means, but it sounds good. Reuben was quite drunk. Let's call Benjamin. Not now. It's the middle of the night. Can I sleep on your floor, or do I have to sleep in my Chevy? Not after what happened to Faulkner. Your pallet is still by my bed. I didn't say anything at that, but it made me understand the shape Reuben had been in since I left. Okay, that's the bottom of page 191, and I'll end the episode there. And that's the end of chapter 15, starting chapter 16 on page 192. Next time, in this beautiful hardback book of Blue Whiskey, a novel by Matt Severson that you can get by contacting me at paperbackrocker@live.com. While you're doing that, let me know how you're enjoying all my accents. And other than that, I hope you have a good week. I should have another episode coming in a few days, so watch for that. And stay tuned for another episode of the Paperback Rocker Show.
The Paperback Rocker has signed off.